Welcome to this module on business models, financing options, and procurement of sound sustainable district energy systems. This is the sixth module on the training District Energy Development developed by UNEP and the Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency. The objective of this training is to offer insights on key aspects in the development of district energy systems. The target groups are national and local authorities, including project managers and sponsors, technical experts, as well as local energy utilities. The objective of this training is to enable participants to gather an overview of key aspects of district energy systems, learn how to step by step develop district energy systems planning, and have an overview from real case studies and best test cases. Learning outcomes. The main objective of this module is to share insights on business models, financing options, and procurement of sound sustainable district energy systems. By the end of this module, you will be able to describe, understand, and discuss the importance of developing business models for sound and sustainable district energy systems. Recognize and apply the key steps in developing business models for sustainable district energy systems. Define key actions from local authorities to ensure this. List the strengths and limitations of each of the business models. Key steps in district energy planning. As described in UNEP's flagship publication, District Energy in Cities Unlocking the Potential of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, there are 10 key steps to be undertaken in district energy planning. In this module, we will take a close look at steps 7 to 10, which include developing a business plan, analyzing procurement options, facilitating finance, and replication. The role of business models. Although shares of district energy systems are expanding and several national and local governments are setting policies and targets to enable their adoption, there are still long-standing barriers to greater large-scale deployment of modern district energy. These barriers include lack of awareness, scarce local and institutional capacity, inadequacy of holistic planning policies or regulations, and fragmented or absence of data needed to assess their viability. But beyond these barriers, it is oftentimes economic related hurdles which hamper the necessary investments to develop, upgrade, or refurbish this technology, especially in developing countries. These barriers are typically related to high initial capital expenditure or capex, long payback times, or demand uncertainty. Also, in countries or markets where district energy has not been proven, high rates on debt due to risk can also reduce the viability of projects. And in all of these cases, robust business models, including steady financial structures along with demonstration projects, will be critical to attract and engage stakeholders such as investors, owners, operators, utilities, suppliers, end customers, and local authorities, leveraging lower cost to finance needed to ensure the investment. A robust business model will also cater good functioning and operation of the project, which in turn ensures the project's stability and longevity. So in a way, this statement from Chesborough also holds true in district energy systems. A mediocre technology pursued within a great business model may be more valuable than a great technology exploited via a mediocre business model. Definition. A business model is defined as a plan for the successful operation of a business, identifying sources of revenue, the intended customer base, products, and details of financing. It boils down to the company's plan for making a profit based on pricing and cost. The main components of a business model are core strategy. It is the first component of a business model which describes how a firm competes relative to its competitors. The firm's mission statement, the product or market scope, and the basis for differentiation are the primary elements of a core strategy. Strategic resources. A firm is not able to implement a strategy without resources, so the resources affects its business model substantially. For a new venture, its strategic resources may initially be limited to the opportunity they have identified and the unique way they plan to serve their market. The two most important strategic resources are a firm's core competencies and strategic assets. Core competence is a skill that leads to a sustainable social benefit. It requires an organization to provide long term investment that leads to the development of strategic assets that are then able to produce a social benefit. Partnership network. Key partnerships are the network of suppliers, partners, and other relationships that make the business model work. Companies forge partnerships to optimize their business models, reduce risk, and or acquire resources. Customer interface. Primary elements of customer interface are target market, fulfillment and support, and pricing structure. A firm's target market is the limited group of individuals or businesses that it goes after or tries to appeal to. The target market a firm selects affects everything it does, from the strategic assets it acquires to the partnerships it forges to its promotional campaigns. Fulfillment and support describes the way a firm's product or service goes to the market or how it reaches its customers. It also refers to the channels a company uses and what level of customer support it provides. All these issues impact the shape and nature of a company's business model. The third element of a company's customer interface is its pricing structure. Such pricing models vary depending on a firm's target market and its pricing philosophy. Characterization of business models. The business model canvas breaks down the concept of business model into 9 interconnected elements. That is, key partners, key activities, key resources, value proposition, customer relationships, channels, customer segments, cost structure, and revenue streams. Partner network. These are the stakeholders and organizations involved in the venture as well as the people associated with it. In district energy, partner networks are typically constituted by public and private entities, although the degree of participation of each one can vary substantially depending on the business case, namely on the return on investment required and the degree of control and risk appetite of the public sector. This is described in detail later in this module. Value proposition. It describes how a company's product or service fulfills the need of customers and why a customer would buy from the company. In district energy, the value proposition can be divided into two levels: the individual users and society as a whole. For the individual users, value proposition is linked to cost optimality, thermal comfort, and low maintenance of the system as compared with other technological solutions. On an aggregated social level, value proposition is related to sustainability of the energy supply, energy security, and potential reduction of local pollution. From an investor's point of view, this could be short return on investment or low risk. Key activities. This is defined by what the company must do to make the business model work. In district energy, key activities are planning and construction of the new network system in a cost-effective manner and monitoring and control mechanisms to ensure stable access and fair pricing for the heating and cooling. Customer segment. This refers to the differentiation of customer profiles which the specific product will be addressed to. In district energy, customer segments might be grouped according to locations, socio-demographics, building uses, or energy demands. In order to contemplate socio-economic development interests, the business case should also contemplate population segments at the risk of social exclusion in order to avoid fuel poverty. A very specific case of customer segments in district energy systems are prosumers. These are industries or other non-residential users whose main business activity is not heating or cooling production, but who do have a waste heat recovery in place. Customer relationship. It is the connection and communication that the operating company has or will have with the customers. In district energy, the communication between the utility and end user is mostly the welcome to utility, bill receipt, season change, rate change, and contract anniversary. Key resource. It describes the most important assets needed to make a business model work. In district energy, the main resources are financial for capital and operational expenditure, technical know-how to plan, design, construct and operate the network, technological for necessary technological solution, and fuel resources, ideally from renewable sources such as biomass. Distribution channel. It is described as a chain of businesses or intermediaries through which a product or service passes until it reaches the final buyer or the consumer. In district energy, this can be understood as the physical distribution energy network. Here, the ownership of the network is highly important. Depending on who has the duty to maintain the substations, it may affect the decision-making process to implement measures towards energy efficiency. Cost structure. This refers to the types and relative propositions of fixed and variable costs that a business incurs, which are case specific. A very important concept to address in the cost structure is the return on investment. This is how long it will take to recover the money that has been invested in the project. As with renewable electricity production, district energy typically has high capital expenditure and a relatively low operating expenditure. Capital expenditure includes development costs, which are associated with pre-feasibility studies, permitting applications, feasibility studies and planning applications, pipes, networks, and thermal plant and storage. Operational expenditure includes the running costs of a project after the initial development and construction. For a district energy system, these include fuel, operation, maintenance, local and state taxes, electricity, insurance, water, chemicals, service contracts for primary equipment, and management of projects. Revenue stream. This describes how a company plans to make money from its business because earning revenue and producing a superior return on invested capital is the primary objective of a company. Heating and cooling sales. The absolute demand and load profiles of buildings connected to the project ultimately determine the revenue that can be obtained. A diverse mix of consumers and thermal storage will mean a smoother aggregated load profile, allowing for cheaper and more efficient heat or cooling production. Power sales. The majority of project also derives revenue from power sales through CHP production. This power is usually delivered to a regional or national electricity grid, local distribution networks, or specific local demand, depending on the CHP capacity and other factors. Ancillary services and capacity payments. A capacity premium may be provided if the system is embedded in an area with a stressed power grid or if it provides balancing services to the regional or national electricity grid. Connection charges. Users typically must pay for their connection to a district energy network. This can be either a one-off payment or a fixed tariff applied per year or month, covering maintenance and other works that are consumption independent. Other revenue sources may include subsidies for renewable or CHP heat, carbon trading, and avoided penalties for local carbon compliance policies. Next step is to develop the business model. Various types of business models exist for district energy systems, and models based on ownership type are explained briefly. There are three types of commonly seen business models in district energy based on ownership type. They are fully public models, privately owned models, and hybrid models. Public models are projects owned by public bodies such as municipalities. Private models are projects where private company secures funding for the project and owns and operates the network. Hybrid models are projects where the network is owned, funded, and delivered jointly by a private company and a public body. Fully public models often exercise a high degree of control compared to the hybrid and privately owned models. But public models are also exposed to a higher degree of risk compared to the other two models. In terms of returns, privately owned models and hybrid models generate higher returns compared to fully public models. Business models based on financial return on investment and degree of control or risk. The relative involvement of the public or private sector depends broadly on two factors: the return on investment for project investors and the degree of control and risk appetite of the public sector. In this way, fully public, fully private, and hybrid ownership models, each having a distinct set of characteristics, can be identified. Hybrid models are of various types based on how the ownership and structure is organized between the government and private investors. A concession is a form of a PPP where the government defines and grants specific rights to an entity, usually a private company, to build and operate a facility for a fixed period of time. The government may retain the ultimate ownership of the facility and/or the right to supply the services. Joint ventures are an efficient way to capitalize on the unique strengths of the public and private sectors, providing a vehicle for private sector to help deliver public services at lower cost without adversely affecting quality or accessibility. Under the joint venture model, the public and private sector partners accept the idea of shared risk and shared reward. Each must be willing to make quantifiable contributions during the project development and implementation process. Project sponsor. In PPP project, sponsors generally organize a special purpose vehicle or SPV or a concessionaire company to deal with lenders, investors, insurance providers, contractors, and other parties, especially government authority. Generally, a successful PPP project has mutual agreement and balance of risk sharing between government authority and sponsors prior to financial close. Private sector participation in PPPs. If set up correctly with a supportive regulatory environment, public-private partnerships can be effective procurement methods to ensure the provision of sustainable heating and cooling services while encouraging private sector participation and risk sharing. A PPP is a contractual arrangement between a public sector agency and a private sector party involving private sector participation in the development, financing, construction, operation, maintenance, and/or transfer or deconstruction or designation of a public infrastructure project. PPP contracts can cover different stages like design, construction or build, finance, maintain, own, operate, and transfer. Business models with private participations range from service contracts to full privatization, which can be seen in the figure. PPPs have increasingly been used largely through concession, where the public sector owns the infrastructure, but the private sector operates the infrastructure service and receives revenues deriving from it. District energy business models for real estate developers. Three common business models for real estate developers in district energy are in-house, joint venture, and full concession models. As mentioned previously, a concession is a form of PPP where the government defines and grants specific rights to an entity to build and operate a facility for a fixed period of time. The government may retain the ultimate ownership of the facility and/or right to supply the services. In this model, the developers have 0% equity and hence maximum risk transfer. The contracts are usually 25 to 50-year BOOT contracts. BOOT, or Build, Own, Operate and Transfer, is a form of project delivery method usually for large-scale infrastructure projects wherein a private entity receives a concession from the public sector to finance, design, construct, own and operate a facility stated in the concession contract. This enables the project proponent to recover its investment operating and maintenance expenses in the project. Joint venture. Joint ventures are an efficient way to capitalize on the unique strengths of the public and private sectors, providing a vehicle for the private sector to help deliver public services at lower cost without adversely affecting quality or accessibility. Under the joint venture model, the public and private sector partners accept the idea of shared risk and shared reward. Each must be willing to make quantifiable contributions during the project development and implementation process. The developer owns less than 50% of the equity and shares the cost and risks. Under in-house model, there is no government intervention and the developers need to secure 100% of the equity. Though the developer retains all of the risk, they also retain complete control over the project. Operation and management can be contracted and there is potential for sale after completion. Costing. How much does district energy cost? Due to its ability to use waste heat, such as from power plants, higher efficiency cooling, and thermal storage, along with avoiding individual energy solutions such as gas boilers, air conditioning, gas networks, and their maintenance and overcapacity, district energy can be delivered far cheaper than conventional heating or cooling systems with much lower carbon emissions and fossil fuel consumption in energy dense areas. District heating is a cost-effective heating solution even with more and more buildings being built according to low energy requirements. A new district heating system is highly competitive with respect to heating price when compared to individual heating solutions when the district heating system is established in cities and towns. This is the case for both older buildings and for new areas with low energy buildings. Importance of load density. Load density is crucial to reducing the cost of the heat or cool network. Cities should ensure that the majority of appropriate demand is connected to the district energy system through land use policies, subsidies, and advocacy. New cities beginning to develop district energy should focus on priority zones with high load density to prove the technology. After energy mapping, zones with high energy densities, such as business districts, residential areas with many apartment complexes, etc., can be easily identified. Expanding cities should be designing their city to have higher load density and more mixed use zoning to optimize investments. Refinancing of systems may provide capital to rapidly expand. Consolidated cities may have paid off a lot of capex and can start connecting less dense neighborhoods, having mostly detached single family homes and interconnecting systems to achieve higher system reliability. Refurbishment cities should focus on maintaining higher customer connection to spread costs of redevelopment over more consumers. Coordination and capacity. Strong coordination between different city functions within a multi-stakeholder coordination framework is vital to reducing costs. Capacity within local planning departments and utilities for assisting projects through the planning process reduces the planning and development costs, which can be up to 20% of an investment. Huge potential exists for sharing cost of any earthworks with other utilities such as transport development, area development, or with road surfacing works. This can dramatically reduce cost. Hence, coordinating with different city municipality departments and arranging for multiple activities to be carried out in parallel will significantly drive down the costs. This can be achieved with effective stakeholder identification and engagement. Figure shows the percentage distribution of network costs in Sweden. The influence of earthworks on the cost in the inner city is a major reason why cost of DHN can vary so much between cities. Anchor loads and storage. Having a heat or cool profile that is very seasonal will mean low utilization for some heat capacity, such as CHP, meaning higher costs. Connecting anchor loads such as swimming pools, data centers, low temperature industry, can ensure higher utilization outside of the traditional heating or cooling season. Having a heat or cool profile which fluctuates from very low to very high across an average day can mean low utilization and higher costs. Storage of heat or cool can avoid this, and for district cooling can avoid electricity demand during peak periods. Anchor loads can also reduce the range between daily low and daily high demand. Disconnection from fossil fuel prices. Higher efficiency, use of waste heat, and increased renewables means that district energy uses less fossil fuels than conventional technologies and is thus more resilient to fossil fuel price increases and will enable a steadier price for heat or cool and for cities to become more energy independent. However, decreases in fossil fuel prices may make alternative technologies seem cheaper, especially in the absence of a strong carbon price or mechanism for leveling the playing field. Fossil fuel price projections will be accounted for in the feasibility study and financial modeling of the project. New cities may use fossil fuels or electricity to initially kickstart networks. Although cheap renewables and waste heat is preferable, using fossil fuels and electricity can be a benefit in the short term by linking the DHC price to conventional technologies that it is competing with, ensuring conventional technologies are unlikely to get cheaper than DHC. Financial instruments. Ensuring and facilitating the finance is another key component to ensure the development of district energy. Again, local authorities and utilities can have a key role in this, and there are many ways in which they can support this task. The city has various ways in which to facilitate finance. Demonstrating new policies. These can leverage private sector investment in other networks. Creating city assets, such as land, public rights of way, and access to publicly owned anchor loads can reduce risk of projects. Debt provision and bond financing. Many cities use their access to cheaper debt to lower the financial cost of a project and ensure their influence to ensure its success. Tax credit and exemptions with tax system. Loan guarantees and underwriting. Cities can warrant a lower cost of debt which can support loan guarantees. Securing and providing grants. Cities can provide grants to projects but also attract national and international funds on the project's behalf. Setting up a revolving fund. New cities can set up a revolving fund designed to create multiple starter networks and also demonstrating new technologies. Investor understanding of investments per project phase. As mentioned in previous modules, district energy project development can be divided into 5 phases, namely feasibility, development, construction, operation, and reinvestment. In each phase, different financial instruments can be accessed to fund the activities needed to be carried out in that phase. Grants and loans are the most common types of financial instruments which are accessed in district energy development. For example, in the feasibility phase, funding is needed to carry out activities to gather data and prepare energy mapping to determine the loads, sources of heat, and finally, with the help of energy consultants and planners, to analyze the techno-economic and environmental potential of implementing district energy. To fund these activities, national and international grants can be accessed, which are earmarked for sustainable solutions for heating and cooling sector. Similarly, loans can be accessed in the construction and operation phase to purchase equipment, lay down network, make energy efficiency improvements, etc. Demonstration projects. By demonstrating new technologies, new policies, and demonstrating institutional capacity, cities lower the perceived risk to private investors, local governments, and other funding sources and prove the commercial viability of district energy. An example of a city which implemented district heating using demonstration project is Vancouver, Canada. The Southeast Falls Creek Neighborhood Utility is city owned and supplies district heating using waste heat sources like sewage. This project is financed like a private sector project to prove commercial viability. It has also been used to test and implement new connection policies in the city. The success of this project has resulted in one additional district heat network to be privately developed in the city. The owners of two legacy steam heat systems also are establishing plans to convert from natural gas to renewable sources of energy. Green bonds. One of the available finance instruments are green bonds. They are a type of fixed income instrument that is specifically designed to raise money for climate or environmental projects. Green bonds were used in Gothenburg to finance district energy. Gothenburg is a champion city of District Energy in Cities initiative. City of Gothenburg issued the first Nordic Green Bond in September 2013. Urban Development and Treasury departments select projects based on environment or climate strategy. It is verified by Environment Administration. Projects supported by green bonds include district heating, biogas, sustainable houses, electric vehicles, etc. The green bond supports the decarbonization of district heating by 2030. By the end of 2015, Sweden will have released bonds worth $534 million. Revolving funds. An amount of money that exists in order to finance something but from which any loans must be replaced in order that the full amount is available again. Revolving funds have been used to support both government and non-profit operations. An example for a city that implemented revolving fund concept is Toronto. Toronto established the non-profit Toronto Atmospheric Fund or TAF in 1991 with $20.2 million from the sale of a city-owned property. The fund's mission is to accelerate reductions in local greenhouse gas emissions by testing and scaling up solutions in renewable energy, energy efficiency, and reduced fossil fuel consumption. TAF originally provided only grants, but a key barrier to scaling solutions lay in leveraging capital. Today, TAF provides grants and loans, undertakes special projects, and creates partnerships. TAF's assets generate around $1.3 million in revenue annually for grants and special projects. Today, project funding since inception has been about $26.3 million. TAF helped finance a tri-generation system that combines electricity generation, heating, and cooling produced by a highly efficient system serving 3 large buildings. City-level subsidy. A city-level subsidy is a benefit given to an individual, business, or institution by the local or city government in the form of a cash payment or a tax reduction. It is often considered to be in the overall interest of the public, given to promote a social good or an economic policy. District heating systems qualify to receive city-level subsidies. An example for city-level subsidy best case practice is Paris Urban Heating Company (CPCU). In this case, the municipality owns 33% share in the CPCU. CPCU's targets on heat production are to reach 50% renewable or recovered heat in 2015 and increase it to 60% by 2020. If 50% target is met, a national incentive will reduce VAT on the heat by 5.5% to customers. The concession contract sets a cap for the heat delivered against the share of renewables. For those living in social housing, the city enforces a special law. Land value capture. Land value capture is a policy approach that enables communities to recover and reinvest land value increases that result from public investment and government actions. Land value capture is rooted in the notion that public action should generate public benefit. Public investments, such as building transportation or sewer facilities, can increase adjacent land values, generating an unearned profit for private landowners. The unearned value, increase in land value which otherwise profit landowners cost-free, may be captured directly by converting them into public revenue. Thus, land value capture internalizes the positive externalities of public investments, allowing public agencies to tax the direct beneficiaries of their investments. It is applicable to new development areas such as new train stations and new cities. It is also typically used to finance the infrastructure like train or metro that leads to land value increase but also has high potential to finance district heating infrastructure by DBLVC. This development based land value capture is a type of land value capture mechanism which captures the land value increase as the land is urbanized to finance infrastructure investments. China will be using DBLVC for high potential urban areas around new transit stations to finance infrastructure investment and district heating. Procurement in district energy systems. Procurement is the act of obtaining goods or services, typically for business purposes. Procurement is mostly commonly associated with businesses because companies need to solicit services or purchase goods, usually on a relatively large scale. Procurement options will depend on the business plan and degree of private sector involvement. Designing a procurement package that will attract strong bids from the private sector can require experience in local authorities or municipal utilities, and capacity building is key to ensuring procurement is high quality and competitive. International and national support in capacity building for cities, as well as city twinning and intercity support, can ensure that cities have appropriate experience in designing procurement packages and contracts with private sector. If district energy is to be developed under a concession contract, the procurement package is an opportunity for local authority to control and direct private sector investment. Many cities procure the private sector on short-term design and build contracts. District energy systems tend to be natural monopolies. They require price regulation to ensure no undersupply or overprice, normally treat them as public good, restructuring of cities' urban plan. Regulatory instruments, price regulation models. Generally, there are three main types of price regulation models: true cost, price cap, and no price regulation. True cost pricing. This is used in Danish district heating sector. It stipulates that only costs related to production and distribution of heat to the customers can be included in the heating price. This includes depreciation of assets and financing costs to ensure that district heating companies are able to sustain and develop in the long and short term. This model works well when interests are aligned in keeping prices down. It is a benefit in that it discourages public authorities from using profits generated from district energy supply in other areas of public spending. However, this model does not control increasing spending in, for example, operation and maintenance, increasing depreciation time, or increasing salaries. These aspects are areas where profit maximization could be introduced. The success of true cost pricing relies on equal access to information about how prices are set, and issues can arise in situations where public regulatory authorities do not have access to all the necessary information about the pricing structure. Price cap. The price cap principle is used in the Dutch district heating systems. It sets a maximum allowed price for heat sales, usually set against another benchmark of heat supply types. In the Netherlands, the price cap is set against the cost of heat supply based on natural gas. It stipulates that the heating price from a district heating supplier cannot exceed the cost of benchmark heat supply. The benefit is that this is a simple model that ensures prices remain below the politically set threshold. It also promotes cost efficiency in district heating companies, as investments or spending that will increase the heat prices above the threshold cannot be covered. The challenge is that it is a fairly rigid model that often does not include room for local conditions. This could be managed by specific legislation. The model also entails the question of what a feasible benchmark price is. Is fossil gas a useful benchmark? For example, including a carbon price, or could it be the cost of individual renewable heating installations or heat pumps? It also includes the incentive to set district heating prices just below the benchmark price to maximize revenue. Price cap pricing relies on equal access to information about how prices are set, and issues can arise in situations where companies have better information than public authorities. No price regulation. A model with no price regulation is usually combined with no mandatory connection regulation. Therefore, customers paying high tariffs in one district heating network are free to choose other supply options, including individual systems. Here, district heating companies will have to convince customers of the quality and low price of their product before customers connect. This is the case in Gothenburg, Sweden. The benefit is that it is a simple method that does not require detailed regulation. It can potentially realize efficient prices if proper mechanisms are in place. The challenge is that this model does not sufficiently account for some costs made by customers who connect to district heating systems. It is usually not easy to switch heating systems and will only be profitable over long time frames. It also introduces a significant amount of risk for district heating companies as they do not know their market size with certainty. It also entails a risk of not effectively dealing with the monopoly situation in district heating systems. District heating regulation. District heating regulation models differ from one city to another. Since the conditions from city to city differ, there isn't one regulation model that is suitable for all types of projects. Models range from heavy regulation, which are overly bureaucratic and prescriptive, to light touch approach with no price regulation, which can be seen in Sweden. These regulations can directly impact the private sector participation in district energy projects who are always looking for favorable climate for investment and uncomplicated means to collaborate. Generally, the national government may introduce an overarching law which governs the sector, or it can be covered by wider energy sector legislation. Cities can also supplement these national laws with certain local regulation that fit the local development environment. These regulations on a national level must set goals and targets that they want to achieve and build regulation that will support their vision. For example, there can exist national targets for renewable energy shares in the generation mix and CO2 reduction targets. They can also be achieved indirectly by taxing fossil fuel technologies. Hence, regulation must try to strike a balance in order to protect consumer rights and enable utility operators to cover costs, make a reasonable profit, and incentivize investment in the sector, especially needed for decarbonization. Consumer protection policies. The case of Singapore. Singapore, as many cities around the world, had very little experience of district cooling but had recognized the benefits, particularly in reducing the cooling demand of commercial buildings, which often accounts for 70% of the building's power usage in Singapore. Along with all 45 of the champion cities, Singapore identified the important role in developing district energy systems demonstration project. The city supported a demonstration project in the Greenfield Marina Bay development, which would connect 1.25 million square meters of commercial and residential buildings. Singapore has used this project to test and justify multiple policies and regulations. A key best practice of Singapore's activities in this project includes how it has integrated energy into land use planning, including a tailored connection policy for the Marina Bay zone that mandated connection of commercial buildings. By specifying a high opportunity development zone for testing district cooling and using tailored planning policy for that area, the city can contain initial development and policy change until expansion is justified. Singapore developed regulated tariffs for the zone, pricing district cooling at the next alternative technology cost in order to protect consumers and ensure sufficient returns for the district cooling project. Connection policies coupled with tariff regulation can spur investment in district energy by minimizing risks in cooling load and revenue. Let us now have a look at a few case studies to better understand some of these concepts. Best practice Paris 90 years of concession. Paris was facing poor air quality issues due to coal usage for heating purposes. To overcome this, in 1927, CPCU, a private company, starts developing district heating under a concession contract. Around 20 years later, City of Paris purchases 33%, making CPCU a public-private joint venture. Today, CPCU is 33% owned by City of Paris, 64% by the private sector, and 2% is traded publicly. Dividend to City from CPCU per year is 2 million euros. Annual fee paid to City for concession per year is 7 million euros. Calculated benefits to City each year is 19.5 million euros. The system is 475 kilometers long and nearly 50% renewable, and has integrated waste to energy plants, geothermal units, CHPs, and several heat-only boilers. It services an equivalent of 500,000 households, including 100% of the hospitals, 50% of social housings, and 50% of public buildings. Paris Ownership structure and control. City of Paris owns the district heating network. Production facilities mostly owned by CPCU except three waste-to-energy plants. CPCU does all maintenance, investment, and customer interactions. 4 out of 10 directors on CPCU's board of directors are nominated by City of Paris. Concession contract specifies maximum heat tariff indexed by percentage of renewable energy sources used to encourage renewables. City of Paris can control the production mix of heat and target higher renewable shares. Split asset concession model in Paris. The figure in this slide represents the financial structure of a PPP model of district heating in Paris. As can be depicted, it is organized as a split asset concession model between the local government and the private company called COFLI. In general, in a split asset model, skill sets of stakeholders are separated into the different functions of district energy system. For example, the public sector could be responsible for waste incineration and transmission, and the private sector for CHP heat production. Between these entities, contracts will exist that define offtake and tariffs. In such models, each entity will be responsible for sourcing finance for the district energy functions they control. In Paris, the waste-to-energy plants are owned by regional agency and the rest by the district heating company CPCU. The electricity generated from the CHPs are sold over the electricity grid and is another revenue stream. The main heat produced is distributed over the heat network to the end users via building associations. The heat network is owned by the city but operated by the district heating company CPCU. The City of Paris also acts as the regulator to control the heat tariffs. It can also set special load tariffs for areas with social housing. The end users include hospitals, social housing, public buildings, and residents of Paris. The benefit the system brings to the city annually is calculated to be around 19.5 million euros. Role of local government. As mentioned in the previous module, the local government has four main roles to play during the development of district energy projects. As planner and regulator, the local government has established local district energy development zones and will develop mandatory connection policies after reaching 50% renewables in the energy mix. This ensures sufficient load is available for district energy connection. The local government also plans to increase the share of renewables up to 60% by 2020. As facilitator of finance, the local government utilizes its access to cheap loans to carry district energy related activities. It can also find capital to extend the network to deliver heat to new zones and can pool investments with other municipalities. As provider of district energy, the local government can connect anchor loads such as swimming pools, hospitals, and social housing to district heating networks, ensuring higher utilization. It can also select heat tariffs based on the consumers it is supplying to. As a consumer, the local government is connecting public buildings such as metro stations to the network. As coordinator and advocate, it is setting targets to become more sustainable by increasing the share of renewables in the mix and implementing mandatory connection policies to ensure sufficient loads. Benefit of private sector. Private sector reduces risk associated with generation and distribution of heat with the involvement of local government. The private sector benefits from the mandatory connection policy after reaching 50% renewable share in the energy mix imposed by the City of Paris on the residents, securing more demand. CPCU is self-financing and more efficient as City of Paris is only a part owner. City of Paris also helps secure demand from publicly owned buildings such as metro station, hospitals, etc., having high heat density. Yerevan, Armenia. Status of DHN. Heat supply in Yerevan and throughout Armenia has changed dramatically over the last 30 years. The country has no domestic fossil fuel resources, and up until the 90s, when Armenia faced an economic and energy crisis, the country imported natural gas to fuel district heating networks that supplied 90% of the residential and public buildings. By 1992, however, municipal district heating had virtually disappeared. During the early 90s, regular interruptions of gas imports forced the population to rely on individual heating solutions such as wood, kerosene, and costly electricity. From 1996, gas supply improved and primary energy prices were liberalized. But district heating remained unused due to low reliability, poor maintenance, and significant heat losses, up to 50% in Yerevan's Avan district, which were related to extremely low payment collection rates in the first place, as consumers opted instead for individual gas boilers and electricity. A 2006 assessment found that centralized heat production using the existing district heat networks was approximately 60% more expensive than individual gas fired heaters. The pilot project. The energy assessment carried out by UNDP while developing the JEF project discovered that Armenia has the potential to restore vast amount of district heating networks to provide heat that is safer, cheaper, and more reliable than individual gas-fired boilers. During implementation, heat tariffs was to be determined. The adopted pricing approach reduced the commercial risk for investors by ensuring a guaranteed revenue from electricity sold to the grid at favorable tariff, competitive and affordable heat tariff ensuring high connection rate of the residents and consequently high revenue from heat sales. During the 2011-2012 heating season, the heat tariff of Avan district heating system was 16 AMD per kilowatt hour, while the cost of heat produced by apartment level boilers was about 23 AMD per kilowatt hour. Using these calculations as a basis, a special decision of the Government of Armenia was adopted in April 2006, which recommended to the Public Services Regulatory Commission to set a favorable purchase price for all electricity produced from the cogeneration units of the Avan pilot project during the first 5 years after commissioning of the generation units. It specifically influenced the investment decision of a foreign investor, and in 2006, a heat supply company, Armrus Cogeneration or CJSC, was founded with the majority of shares owned by one foreign investor and the minority held by the municipality of Yerevan. Joint venture model of Yerevan. The figure in this slide represents the financial structure of a PPP model of district heating in Yerevan. As can be depicted, it is organized as a joint venture between the local government and foreign investors. The main CHP plant and heat-only boilers are owned by Armrus Cogeneration. The majority shares of this company are owned by foreign investors, and the municipality has a smaller stake. The electricity generated from the CHP plant is sold on the electricity grid and is another revenue stream. The main heat produced is sold over the heat network to the end users via building associations composed of 10,000 residents. The network is owned by the municipality. A regulator responsible for tariff calculation and approval of heat tariffs is set in place. Currently, CHP could deliver heat at 28 euros per kilowatt hour compared to the boiler delivering heat at 40 euros per kilowatt hour. Feed-in tariff option is available for the project to support the inclusion of sustainable solutions for meeting heat demands. Studies indicate that 50.2 gigawatt-hour of energy and 10,200 tons of CO2 can be saved from this project. The process of development in Yerevan. The process of refurbishing and improving the energy efficiency of district heating systems in Yerevan is depicted in the figure. It was initiated with heat planning. An assessment was carried out by UNDP during the development of JEF project named Armenia, improving the energy efficiency of municipal heating and hot water supply. Following the assessment, the potential for district heating was quickly realized, and the UNDP supported the design and implementation of the restoration of the centralized heat supply system in Awan district of Yerevan. The pilot project would service 32,000 residents of Awan. Next, 8 feasibility and 11 pre-feasibility studies were developed, promoting new technologies in the heating sector. This was also promoted by UNDP. Studies were also made to analyze the options for rehabilitation of heating system at apartment level, block, group, and district level heat sources. A pre-feasibility study for rehabilitation of the heating systems of Awan through CHPs has been conducted in close cooperation with potential investors and the Yerevan Project Institute. Relevant issues have been studied in areas like technical, organizational, financial, and legal. The document of the technical and economic pre-feasibility study has been submitted to the municipality of Yerevan and foreign investors. Next, the regulatory framework was set up. Energy efficiency related laws and decrees and amendments were made in accordance with EU and Eurasian Economic Community directives and technical regulations. The GHG mitigation policy was also implemented. Building codes, methodologies, and handbooks on energy efficiency were also standardized. Yerevan also received consultation during project development, primarily by UNDP. Following the suggestion of UNDP, Yerevan implemented the PPP business model and was also able to perform necessary on-the-ground research to determine cost of heat tariffs. These tariffs were strategically decided to be lower than the cost of individual heating solutions in order to attract a large customer base to connect to the network. Negotiations with various stakeholders was running in parallel to decide on important project characteristics. Capacity building was also running in parallel. An energy efficiency laboratory opened in the State University of Architecture and Construction in 2013. Technical literature related to renewable energy sources and technologies was published in the local language. Project developers also prepared and distributed softwares to make quick calculations on the investment costs, OPEX, and returns of the project, connecting several buildings receiving heat from the network. A bilingual project website was also set up to give the customers information about the developments. A consumption-based payment system was set up by installing apartment-level heat and hot water meters. A multi-part tariff system for heat and hot water is in place. Finally, monitoring and operation of the system is carried out by the district energy company. Role of local government. In order to reduce commercial risk so as to attract private sector involvement, the local government as planner and regulator worked with the national government to allow regulatory changes to electricity and heat tariffs. It set the heat tariff below the cost of heat from individual gas boilers, thus ensuring a high rate of connection to the improved district heating network. This change was effectively subsidized by providing higher electricity price to the CHP by feed-in tariffs. The heat tariff is multi-part. This encouraged reduction in demand-side consumption, but the fixed element of the tariff ensured fixed cost of connection are paid off. The electricity tariff was calculated to cover all other revenues needed to meet the required return on investment for the private sector. The final electricity tariff was close to the marginal thermal power plant on the Armenian power system. As facilitator of finance, local government provided free use of district heating network infrastructure for demonstration project, leading to establishment of a new PPP-DH company. This, with the CHP feed-in tariff, leveraged more than 9 million USD of investment for restoration of district heating system in Armenia on the basis of high efficiency cogeneration. As a provider of services and consumer, the government is utilizing municipally owned district heat companies as an investment vehicle for upgrading networks. It is also setting waste heat tariff from steel plant to pay off investment in connection. As coordinator, the city is responsible for coordinating multiple district heating companies. City also had an important role in advocating for district heat and persuading public that it wouldn't be like the old system with intermittent heat and high prices. City was also able to advocate the regulatory change at the national government needed to deliver the investment. Anshan, China. The problem. Currently, district heating in Anshan is dominated by a few large district heating companies, some of which are owned by the city and some of which are privately owned. These networks are separate and typically fueled by inefficient coal boilers that are not optimized for the load on the network. These coal boilers have resulted in high pollution levels in the city, which has been fined previously for high levels of CO2, SO2, and PM10 particles. Lack of hot water connections means networks are underutilized. To modernize its district energy system, Anshan plans to utilize some 1 gigawatt of surplus heat produced by the local Angang steel plant to heat 50 million meters square or 70% of the city's total heating area. Angang steel would become the largest heat source for the city. The local government is catalyzing this use of waste heat through the development of new transmission line to capture excess heat, initially from the steel plant. The new heat capture project represents a 30 to 35 million euros investment in a more efficient system that aims to lower carbon intensity and improve local air quality. The local government is providing the finance for the project. A short payback period of 2.5 years highlights the significant financial benefits that the project will bring as Anshan closes the loop on waste heat and simultaneously reduces the city's coal consumption by projected 173,000 tons. In Anshan, the local government's role in ownership of the transmission system has been critical in capturing Angang Steel's waste heat and allowing the optimization of the district energy system in the city. The split ownership model of private sector production and distribution allows the local government to focus efforts on the transmission line. The provincial government in Liaoning province, where Anshan is located, has supported the actions of the Anshan government and attaches great importance to the use of industrial surplus heat. The role of private sector. The local government has been working with Danfoss, a Danish district energy company, and Kawi, a Danish district energy consultancy, to develop additional sustainable and integrated heating solutions for the city. Danfoss supplied heat exchangers for waste heat connection to the steel plant. The new transmission line will be owned and operated by a joint venture that is 60% city owned by Kianfeng District Heating Company and 40% private company called Fuan. The construction will be subcontracted to individual contractors. All existing district heat companies will remain, purchasing heat from the central transmission company. Anshan Local Government. In its role as planner and regulator, Anshan Local Government developed with the help of private sector a new strategy for district heat development in the city. City's focus on pollution reduction is key driver in transforming the system. In its role as facilitator of finance, the local government directly funded the majority of the improvements in the city, including connection of waste heat and the transmission line. Large city investment has leveraged private investment in the transmission line. As provider and consumer, Anshan local government is utilizing municipally owned district heat companies as an investment vehicle for upgrading networks. It is also setting waste heat tariff from steel plant to pay off investments. As coordinator and advocate, the city will be coordinating the operation of multiple district heating companies and will advocate to other cities in the region. Benefits of private sector in Anshan case. Danfoss bring international expertise in district heating development, enabling Anshan to use less coal and thus pollute less. They are assisting in developing additional sustainable and integrated heating solutions for the city. Danfoss also supplied the heat exchangers for waste heat connection to the steel plant. Investment provided from private sector in transmission line reduces risk to city and allows funds to be used elsewhere. Key learnings. Business models are key to ensure a stable and viable district energy service during its complete life cycle, including development, operation, and end-of-life stage. Business model can have a large influence on a project's perceived risk and funding costs. No single model is applicable everywhere. District energy systems business models based on ownership type are fully public models, PPP or hybrid models, and privately owned models. The relative involvement of the public or private sector depends broadly on two factors. Number one, return on investment for project investors, and number two, degree of control and risk appetite of the public sector. The city can facilitate finance through various instruments such as demonstrating new technologies, new policies, creating city assets, debt provision and bond financing, tax credits and exemptions, loan guarantees and underwriting, securing and providing grants, or setting up a revolving fund. Regulation can act as an incentive, particularly in less mature district energy markets. Tariffs must be transparent and account for or encourage investment. Subsidies or grant funding are a powerful tool to revitalize and rehabilitate legacy infrastructure or facilitate a new sector. In an unregulated market, an independent dispute resolution mechanism is recommended. Recommendations. Publicly owned infrastructure is often recommendable since it will often require significant efforts of community engagement. Identify where competition can be introduced, for example, in the production parts through tenders. Continuous communication between various stakeholders is advised. Removal of regulatory barriers as well as optimizing and simplifying the regulations at the local and national level should be promoted. Pick low-hanging fruits. Start with high-demand consumers while making sure the full potential can be exploited. Frameworks for providing low-cost financing options and avoiding unnecessary, administratively heavy process is an important precondition to effectively engage communities and industries. Development of insurance schemes to de-risk renewable sources such as geothermal. Set up a comprehensive district energy governance scheme, including price regulation, ownership, and legislation. Congratulations on completing the e-training. For more information or questions regarding the e-training or the initiative, please visit the websites mentioned on the slide.